My name's David Short. I'm Regional Communications Manager for Kier Highways. So I look after communications, customer care and corporate responsibility in our portfolio of local highways contracts. So we work with Northamptonshire, Suffolk, Surrey, County Council, Lincolnshire, a number of other clients up and down the country. So a little bit of a background about what S-Skills is and why we've launched S-Skills. So this is working with our client Surrey County Council. We've been there since 2011 and as part of the contract extension, as much as some things happen at contract extension time, we made some commitments about social value and about how we can increase the social value and level of skills within highways. So Surrey is a very affluent place, and so if you don't have a job in Surrey, there's a really good reason. It's also a place where we struggle to recruit highway operatives. So our recent advert we went out, we had 7 applications, of which 2 turned up for an interview. So one of the things we're having to do in Surrey is very much self-grow our staff. We also understand there's a large reservoir of untapped assets in our community, which is a very politically correct way of saying naughty boys. So, and we'll go into what we mean a bit more background. Okay. So there you go. There's our PC statement about creating opportunity for those furthest from employment and realising the untapped assets within our communities. So a lot of the work we did, and we're going to credit Highways UK for the excellent report, which was the ticking time bomb, which was published I think in April earlier this year, and that really sets out the challenges we face as an industry about highways skill shortages, but also and that's on a very much an industry level. On a individual level for some of the people, it's about moving them from being a service user to adding value. So what we mean is someone who is using the services such as the criminal justice system and the benefits system, and all the various systems that our local authorities and other people support, into adding value. So being a taxpayer, adding value to the community. It's also about building relationships between industry and community. So how do we interact? How do us as a big employer and Surrey County Council as a major client? How do we make sure we have an impact in the communities where we work? The other thing is the candidates, and we'll see some of the guys in a minute. Very often they are on the fringes or within the criminal justice system. They suffer from a range of different challenges, a range of different backgrounds, and they are intensive for the local authority. And so all the time that those guys are with us, they're not with their caseworkers. So it's a win-win for everybody. And also we've just come out of an EDI session in the Jacobs Theatre, and they're talking about the need to increase the diversity and equality in our industry, and we've seen a significant number of spin-off benefits from this project, which we can maybe go into briefly as well. So this was filmed during our pilot. So I will explain about how it all works and stuff in a minute, but this was this film we produced was during our pilot programme, and so you can tell how long ago it was, because since then it's become socially acceptable not to shave. So you'll see in a minute. So if you run VT.
Yeah, I've learned how to use like most of the tools, how to do cuttings on the floor. Like to try and get into the highway like maintenance services and stuff like that. It's just something more active and like using my hands more often.
So we're here today piloting our social enterprise for highways. What we're trying to do is encourage young people to get involved in the highways industry. We're suffering from a severe skill shortage in highways, so we're trying to really encourage people into the industry.
Today the relationships between Brooklands Museum, who've allowed us to use this site to train young people, and also it provides them with the benefit of having their potholes filled. Kier Highways have provided the skills of the day and all the equipment, so they've got a really skilled workforce here, showing the young people and young adults how to work on a highway site. and they're doing that throughout the week. The benefit for them is they identify very early some talent for potential apprenticeships and jobs, but they also provide social value back into the community, which is part of their contractual obligation with Surrey County Council.
So how does it work? What is this thing, S-Skills? So in essence, it's very simple. So we provide training and then work placements and then job opportunities from those furthest from employment. So in essence, it's a 2-week training period. So call it a boot camp, but there's a 2-week training induction period, followed by a 12-week work placement, followed by a job opportunity. And that really, in essence, what it is. Now, it was a bit more complicated than that, and it took a long time for us to get there. But there's a slide here which sets out the development timeline. So, Kier, do you want to talk a little bit about that timeline?
Yeah. So, sorry, my name's Keir Schiltz, confusingly, so it's a different spelling. But I'd have nothing to do with highways before this project. So my background is in working with vulnerable people. So when David talked about the cohort of who was coming into the project, that's who I work with on a day-to-day basis. As David mentioned, it's been a long time coming to fruition. So back in 2015, we were thrown together in a meeting where Surrey County Council were in effect asking Kier Highways for some money to do some programmes with the vulnerable people we already work with. There's a couple of issues with that. Kier Highways quite rightly didn't want to give up any money, and secondly, the programmes we were asking to fund weren't actually very good. And so what when we were thrown together, what we decided to work on is something that didn't cost loads of money and was very good. And we started to formulate some ideas, and this is the process we went through. One of the difficult things is the stakeholders, and in the normal way you would think my service would be 100% behind it, but actually the most difficult stakeholders were internal Surrey County Council services. The easiest stakeholders to engage were on their highways side themselves. We already were developing a model which was around bringing together contractual businesses who already contract with Surrey County Council with the services, and that was called our community skills model, and that's what David and I primarily used to work through this. And then we were building this network of people who are interested in what we are trying to achieve, which is those furthest from the labour market being able to move towards the labour market in the specific industry of highways. Do you want to go from pilot onwards then?
Yeah, so we then thought, right, how are we going to approach it? What are we going to do? So we had a lovely model, and we had some cohort of people. So we thought we'd do a pilot. So we put together a pilot. We were very fortunate to be given the opportunity to work at Brooklands Museum. So Brooklands Museum is a motor and aviation museum in Weybridge in Surrey, and if you haven't been, go there. It's a fantastic place to go. And they offered us the opportunity to go and do some training in Brooklands. So the reason it works is Brooklands, they share the same values as us. So theirs is about getting young people into engineering, but also it's a safe place. So it has got vehicle movements, and it's got cars moving in and out, and it's got car parks, and it's got roads. It's the site of the first ever British Grand Prix. So we had people patching and potholing on the start-finish straight of the first ever British Grand Prix. So it was a quite exciting place to go and work. But we had to do a lot of busting quite a lot of myths in order to get the pilot underway. So health and safety for us was a big myth. So busting the myth that you needed to be 18 to work on the highway was one. So no, doesn't need to be. We can have young people 16 to 18 working on the highway. There's also, we had to bust some myths about drugs and alcohol. So I'm sure, like you, if you're working out on the highway, you have a strict red line drugs and alcohol approach, as do we. So a lot of the candidates coming through on the pilot had challenges in terms of drug and alcohol use. So we had to take a more pragmatic and enlightened view of drugs and alcohol, working with our HR teams to think about how that can be implemented. And I can talk ages about how we did that. We also had to understand what we thought success was about. So success wasn't necessarily about having a whole team of people as apprentices at the end of the 2 weeks, or the end of the 14-week programme. For some of these people, the second day was the first day they'd ever put on a pair of boots, put on a hard hat, and actually got up to go to work. So for them, just completing that 2 weeks, getting a skills card to say they'd achieved this training was success. Some people having the 12-week work placement, having some money, was a success. And for others, actually coming and joining us as apprentices was success. So it's not all about just employing the apprentice at the end of it. We also did quite a lot of model testing and refinement. So at the end of the pilot programme, we thought these guys were great. So we had them for a week at Brooklands. We thought these guys are fantastic, they're brilliant, and we could offer them apprenticeship straight away. So they came to our depot in Merrow, near Guildford, and they sat in reception, and there was a very attractive receptionist, and they started making completely inappropriate comments, and we had to ask them to leave the building. So whilst those guys were ready to go and do the work, they weren't work ready. So they weren't ready to come into an environment, and they weren't ready to actually be in a workplace. So what we did is we extended the training period from 1 week to 2 weeks, and we did a whole load of sort of equality and diversity, to give it a phrase, but a lot of more red line setting about respect, about making sure they understood. But we've been trying for years as an industry to break the image, and we've got certain red lines that we enforce, and so putting those red lines down, making sure they're understanding those red lines, was something we did during those extended training induction period. And I'll hand over to you for cohort one, Kier.
So one of the key changes that we introduced into working together is focus on people's abilities rather than their lack of ability. So most of the cohort coming in have been used to being told that they're no good at the things that they're expected to be good at. So one of the main focuses that we used was to focus on ability, not lack of ability. It was also around that having a disability isn't necessarily a barrier to working either in highways industry or to engage in wider society and give value to your community. And that was also around giving the Kier workforce confidence in working with people who they wouldn't normally be expected to work with, or they hadn't had experience of working with before. So a lot of the time I was around on site was around supporting not only the Kier workforce but also the candidates themselves in recognising their own strengths and abilities. And actually I have to say that some of the Kier workers, so the gang leaders, had a better innate abilities in working with vulnerable people than a lot of our paid staff with Surrey County Council. One of the other key things that we learned through the cohort one was the need to be flexible. So it's fine having a great plan of what you're going to do for the day, but actually you need to be flexible in terms of the mood of the group, the weather conditions at the time. What we're actually asking them to complete at the end of the 2 weeks has to be doable, and that's what we worked on strongly throughout that period.
So we've got a little logistics checklist, which we think, if anyone else is thinking about doing this, there's a little checklist. So first thing is to think about impact that we're having on the initiative rather than the outputs, which we spoke about earlier. It's not just about outputs, it's about the impact and the effect that you're having. First of all, think about the diversity of the cohort. Our cohort works much better when you have a mixed cohort. So that's one of the learning points we had. So cohort one was a very mixed. We had people with special educational needs, people with PYPs, which is your naughty boys, and then adults with learning difficulties. And that worked really well. Cohort 2, which we're in at the moment, majority of people are the PYPs, and that is more challenging. So it's been more challenging to manage. There's a sort of pack mentality developed there, which we've had to manage. So it's about that mixed cohort. The second thing is about the venue where we're doing the training. So we mentioned earlier about Brooklands Museum. It's a very safe venue. We can control the risks in there. But it is a sort of a real live environment. It shares our values, as I mentioned earlier, about getting people into the engineering. Interesting, they hadn't considered highways as an engineering form. So Brooklands Museum is where they engineered the bouncing bomb. They built Concorde there, and they hadn't thought about highways and engineering. And we went there and we said, "Your track, look at the concrete specification, blah blah blah," and they were sort of like really, and sort of, "Oh yeah," and so they sort of get into grips with highways as an engineering form. But it does have legacy, and it's quite a nice place for us to go and spend a couple of weeks. So I go and base myself there. I work from there. It's got great Wi-Fi, great coffee. The other thing is about the opportunity. So there has to be at the end of it a reason, a real job, and an attainable job at the end of it. So those are the checklists. If you have to do it again, those are the things that we would recommend. So I'm going to do this. This is my elevator pitch about why S-Skills was successful. So it did realise benefits for all. So for us, for Surrey County Council, and most notably the candidates, it was built on solid foundations of trust and relationships. So between us, I hadn't worked with guys from Children's Services, Adult Social Care, and likewise, and so that was an interesting collaboration between those different parts. And there's a certain amount of cultural fitness. So there was between both Kier, Surrey County Council, and Brooklands Museum. So I won't go through the other bits of it, but I will just play this video.
My name's Callum Smith. I'm a pre-operative for Kier Highways. Kier have helped me out a lot since I started. I feel like I've achieved a lot since I've been here. I've learnt different skills and different techniques. I can see myself doing this in 10-20 years time. I've got money in my pocket, but also feel like I've achieved something as well. They've made a big difference and it's continuing to go really well.
So Callum was one of our superstars. So he came in and he was brilliant. He was the most enthusiastic person. He was there in the 2 weeks. He was a sort of showed real leadership qualities in there as well, and did a fantastic job. So he went through to the 12-week period, and again he was there every day on time. He demonstrated really well. So we offered him an apprenticeship at the end of it, and he turned us down, and he went and got another job closer to home, more money. So, but it was still a big tick for us, but it did teach us some learning that we've got to take away, largely about how we then provide training for our apprentices, because one of the problems that he had is we were asking him to go and do a residential course up at Bircham Newton in order to deliver. So we need to think about how we deliver those courses more locally to suit the needs of the people we're employing. He's saying, I can't go away for a week, my mum needs me. So that's the sort of thing that we're having to take away.
It was also worth saying, he was also one of the ones who was out of our original pilot who was asked to leave. So one of the key bits of the project itself is that you can't fail it. So you come back as many times as you need to be able to progress to the point at which you decide for yourself you don't want to continue. So they can't fail it. So he came back, did the first full cohort, and progressed through to employment.